Make sure you get the podcast, and make sure you watch us on SportsGrid every day, live from 11 to 12. It's the Craig Carton Show with Tyrone Johnson.
They got to go win and execute, and they can't be inconsistent. And that's the thing. It's like Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon, really consistent. And then who is that fourth question mark? And there's been inconsistencies throughout. Hey, Michigan goes out to the West Coast and gets manhandled, and then they come back and then they win. Like, who's the consistent one that is the fourth?
The Bobby Carpenter Show, only on SportsGrid.
Listen, never understood a word he said, but it doesn't matter because he was able to walk into living rooms and get kids to sign. It's a little different situation with the NIL now, but the reality is he represents Louisiana. He is Mr. Louisiana. What better? You should have never fired him to begin with in this spot. So, yeah, I hope they do reconsider and bring him back.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
There's a far longer track record of the Chiefs laying huge numbers and not covering them with Mahomes than anything on the contrary.
And they did that a lot last year where they didn't cover those numbers, but a lot of the time last year they didn't have Rice and they weren't fully healthy, and now they are fully healthy. And now we have an offense that has 4 viable receivers, 2 tight ends, and 2 running backs.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
24 points, and 23 rebounds. Folks, let me tell you something. That's 23 rebounds versus Tennessee. Not Tennessee Tech, not Tennessee Chattanooga, not East Tennessee, West Tennessee, South Tennessee. I don't know how many Tennessees they got in that state. That's a university. He did it against Rick Barnes' kids.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
Another SEC coach fired, plus the Dodgers are the favorites again. Front Office Sports Today starts now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Front Office Sports Today, your look inside the stories that are shaping the business and culture of sports. I'm Baker Machado from FOS Studios in New York City, and coming up today, more drama in Memphis with Ja Morant and huge ratings for Game 7 of the World Series. But let's start with yet another college coach in the SEC shown the door, adding to a record contract buyout in today's main event. Well, after a disappointing home loss to Kentucky, Auburn fired head coach Hugh Freeze over the weekend, buying out the remaining $15.8 million on his contract and raising the total buyouts in college football this season to nearly $186 million, which was already a record. So let's bring in Front Office Sports reporter David Rumsey. So, David, why did Auburn decide to make a move here?
Yeah, hey, Baker, great to be with you again. It's kind of our weekly tradition now,
Yes,
the college football coaching carousel. I mean, it's crazy. It's so expensive. And, you know, this move, Hugh Freeze getting let go at Auburn, was really not all that surprising. He had a terrible record within SEC play, just 6 wins over the past 2.5 seasons. And if you know anything about how competitive the SEC is, that's just not going to cut it, right? Auburn is a former national championship winning program back when they had Cam Newton. So they have the potential, right? Especially with Alabama there, right in their state, you know, winning so many national championships and still staying competitive after Nick Saban had left. So for Hugh Freeze to get let go, not that surprising. And his buyout, you know, just over $15 million, pretty much nothing compared to what we're seeing at LSU with Brian Kelly or Penn State and James Franklin.
Yeah, it's such a good point. I mean, if anything, that $15 million is almost a bargain for the
Exactly.
SEC. But as I mentioned, $186 million we've tabulated so far just in coaching buyouts, a huge record here. Obviously, that number is going to get to $200 million. Who now is sort of on the hot seat that we're sort of watching here?
Yeah, and that's just crazy if we take a step back for a second, because if you had said ahead of this season, could we get a record number? Maybe. Could we get to $200 million in head coaching buyouts? That's just wild. And like you said, it's easily going to surpass it at this point. We have several more names on the hot seat that I think a lot of people expect to be fired with those big numbers by the end of the year. We keep talking about Mike Norvell at Florida State, buyout in the neighborhood of $50 million by the end of the year. You look at Wisconsin and Luke Fickell. Do they move on from him? More than $20 million in buyout money. Not to mention, you know, just plenty of other teams that decide, hey, we didn't make the playoff, or we didn't like where we ended, we didn't make a bowl game, and we're going to move on. So yeah, I'm $250 million. We'll see who gets let go.
David, are you surprised that 25% of the SEC jobs are now open right now? And I feel like the only name that gets thrown around the most to replace these jobs is somebody already in the SEC, and that's Lane Kiffin. Are you surprised by both of those things, that Lane Kiffin's the hottest coaching candidate right now, and there's so many SEC jobs open?
Yes and no, right? Because you look at, like we were saying, how competitive the SEC is. So if you're not winning, if you have a sub 500 record in conference play, that's just simply not going to cut it. So it's a cutthroat league. It doesn't happen every year. It's not like we're seeing this turnover. Now, maybe we will see this rate of turnover every year moving forward now that we're in the era of revenue sharing and NIL. And if we're paying so much money to the players, then we got to hold these coaches a little bit more accountable. And hey, maybe they'll start structuring those contracts in a little different way, like the Louisiana governor was suggesting. He doesn't want to pay those huge buyouts or give all that money if the coaches aren't going to perform. So no, I'm not surprised that 25% of the coaches in the SEC have been fired this season. And as it regards to Lane Kiffin just being, such a popular name for whether it's the LSU job or the Florida job, he certainly is the hot candidate right now. But I think if you listen to, college football insiders who really know the ins and outs of these programs and recruiting and boosters, it's not really a slam dunk, because when you're at a program like LSU, a program like Florida, the expectations are so high. And we know that there's so many insiders that have influence on the athletics, whether it's boosters or just other influential figures, alumni, things like that. So it is interesting. Will Lane want to leave and go to maybe a somewhat, it's not a guarantee, it could be a dysfunctional situation. Maybe he just gets a big raise at Ole Miss, becomes maybe the highest paid coach in college football, at least for now, and stays put where he is.
Yeah, besides Lane Kiffin, are there other coaches maybe that are top candidates for a lot of these open positions? I believe Tulane's coach is one name that we keep hearing about a lot as well.
Right, yeah, and to your point about SEC coaches just continue maybe just hopping around the SEC, at Vanderbilt, Clark Lee has really turned that program around. And obviously they lost on Saturday, and kind of their CFP hopes took a little bit of a dash, although they still only have 2 losses. He's certainly going to be a name to watch as well. And maybe we'll see if he doesn't leave, we'll probably just see this trend continue of coaches, you either leave and get a new job, or you get a contract extension and a raise at your current school. Like we saw SMU lock up Nate Lashley. We saw Nebraska give an extension to Matt Rule, all just within the last week, right? So that's kind of the game, the carousel that goes around. You either get hired somewhere else or you get a better deal where you are.
Yeah, and interesting, Matt Rule got his new contract, and then Nebraska then lost over the weekend to USC as well. Let's talk about the college football playoff, because this week we're finally going to get the top rankings for the playoff. Any names, obviously, or teams that you're keeping an eye on, and who potentially could surprise us in these rankings?
Yeah, so it's always fun. Now we have this annual tradition of the CFP rankings coming out first week of November or so. We've had the AP top 25 poll ever since the preseason, even though we know now that preseason poll with Texas #1 and Penn State #2 was drastically wrong. It's always exciting to see what does the CFP committee think of the teams, and how does that relate to, this AP top 25 poll that we've been using all season. And I think it's really key, because these first set of rankings really do set the standard for this next month until we finish out the regular season and we select those 12 teams for the playoff. And we saw last year, it was in the first year of the 12-team playoff, it was kind of hard for a team to leapfrog another team, once they were ranked behind them, without that other team losing a game or them winning a huge game. So I think it's going to be really key to see how the committee decides between these 1 and 2 loss teams, particularly, maybe a multi-loss team from the SEC versus a single loss team from the ACC. How do those stack up? That was a huge debate last year, right? Does losing 2 games in the SEC equate to losing 1 game in the ACC, or is it simply just a numbers game? It's not as simple as it is in the NFL, right? Where you just tiebreakers win the day. So, and of course, we have financial implications for this, right? If you're seeded 1 through 4, you get automatically sent to the second round, the quarterfinals. If you're seeded 5 through 8, you get a home game and kind of bring in some more revenue that way. So it's not just fan debate of where should teams be seated. There's some big bucks at play here too.
Absolutely. And by the way, obviously the top 2 teams are going to be from the Big Ten, but how many teams do you think from the SEC are going to be making this?
Yeah, I mean, as much turmoil as there is in the SEC, with 25%, four of the 16 coaches getting fired already, like half the conference basically has been ranked in recent weeks. So I expect that to continue. And I do think that the SEC is really in a strong position when we finally get to December and we do have our second 12-team playoff bracket. I do expect probably 4 SEC teams this year. Remember last year we had 4 Big Ten teams and just 3 SEC teams, with Alabama controversially getting left out by some accounts for SMU after they lost to Clemson in the ACC title game. But this year, as strong as Indiana and Ohio State are for the Big Ten, it does look like the Big Ten will only have 3, maybe even only 2 bids, while the SEC should have 4, I would think.
Let's, in the last 90 seconds we got with you, David, let's talk about North Carolina, because it seemed like Bill Belichick got one of his biggest wins of the year for North Carolina against a pretty not very good Syracuse team, but he got it on the road. But is the tide sort of changing and turning here in North Carolina now that they've won, 3 or 4 games now this year?
Right. So this is their first ACC win of the season, which is key. And yes, obviously, beating Syracuse is nothing necessarily to write home about, but it is a victory. And if the previous 2 games, UNC was in those games. They were close games, close losses to Virginia and Cal. So listen, it's the ACC, right? It's not the biggest deal in the world, but North Carolina is now 3-5. If they could somehow rattle off a 3-1 record from this point moving forward, that would get them 6 wins. They would be bowl eligible. And I think given everything that they have had to endure in Chapel Hill this year, that would be a success at the end of the season. Just build some momentum going into the recruiting season and trying to build that roster for 2026 and beyond.
Good stuff, David Rumsey, as always. Thank you, David. And coming up next, everyone, the World Series, the best ratings since 2017, and the Dodgers, the favorite to win it again next year. That's coming up next.
What have the Jays done all season long? And you've seen it, Kev, as a fan of the AL East. They get murdered or lose a heartbreaking game and come back and punch you in the face. They're not. It's what, like the old Jays team used to fold, and that's what I used to hate about them. These guys are different. They're like guys you go to war with. It's like, man, you're my buddy. Like, let's go. Like, their clubhouse dynamic, I've never seen a Blue Jay team where everyone gets along.
Game time decisions, only on SportsGrid.
Apparently, he's a pretty darn good defensive coordinator. The 49ers are decimated by injury. This guy's doing it again. Wade Phillips, Norv Turner, all these guys, there's a lot of great coordinators out there. I'm not so sure Mike McDaniel isn't a real good coordinator, a run game coordinator, a quarterback coach with the 49ers during some Super Bowl years. Maybe he's just not built to be a head coach.
In-game live, only on SportsGrid.
I think a divorce is coming. I don't think LeBron finishes the year with the LA Lakers. And the trump card he tried to play has backfired on him big time. And I'm here for all the smoke. I got my marshmallows. I got my skewers. I got the fireplace. I'm going to sit back, kicking my feet, and watch the LA dysfunction play out in real time.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Governor calls you out in the football state, you're out.
And it was so funny, too, because after he fired Kelly on Sunday, right, Woodward released a statement that said that, in effect, that he was still in charge of the athletic department. Well, you didn't check with the governor, because apparently he had other plans for the athletic department, and you're not in them.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports today. Well, the Dodgers' Game 7 win in 11 innings wasn't just the first time a baseball team has won back-to-back since the Yankees in 2000. It also was one of the best-rated World Series we've seen since 2017. So for more on this, let's bring in Front Office Sports reporter Eric Fisher. So, Eric, just how good were these ratings?
Yeah, 6 and 7 have just hit a whole other level, and we're just getting the initial data. Well, we'll get some Canadian numbers from Sportsnet probably later on Monday, but Fox has already put put out a fast national number from Game 7. Almost 26 million people, most watched World Series game in the United States since 2017. And that's without having a second U.S. Nielsen-rated market.
Right.
It's just incredible, but it just speaks to the kind of drama that these last two games provided.
What do you sort of feel like how the Dodgers were able to pull this game off and made this such a great series, but what was it about the Dodgers that were able to sort of pull this thing off in 7 games?
I think experience matters a lot, that they have been in this hole before, so to speak, and they know how to grind it out. They've been grinding it out over and over and over again. This core with Betts and Freeman and Ohtani and so forth, they've been together for at least 2 years, and in the case of people like Will Smith and Kike Hernandez, for much longer. So they've really coalesced, and even when they were literally outs away and seemingly pitches or one play away from being out of it entirely, they never lost faith and kept pushing.
Yeah, it's crazy to think Mookie Betts, I think not even 33 years old, already has 4 World Series championships.
Will Smith, 6.
Yeah, exactly. Will Smith, 6, yes. 3 for the catcher, Will Smith, 3 for the relief pitcher, Will Smith as well. What do you feel like Rob Manfred thinks about how this all ended here, heading off into what was already a great year for Major League Baseball, but now sort of starting an off season with a really good World Series?
Yeah, from a business perspective, it's just a fantastic coda to what has been a unquestionably successful season for the league. Up in attendance, up in regular season viewership, up in viewership through the earlier rounds, up across multiple countries, digital media consumption, same thing. That, a lot of the key indicators of fan affinity are all pointing north.
Oh.
So that's from the business and marketing side. From the labor side, we'll see whether this really raises the hackles from the smaller markets that they, now 2 years in a row with the big money Dodgers, and they can't compete. Both Rob Manfred and Tony Clark were trying to sort of depress that down, but we've already seen a number of clubs, including your Rockies, speak otherwise. So I think there's a lot of internal conversation that's going to be had about this over the winter.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned all that, because that segues so perfectly to this next question, which is the Dodgers are already the betting favorites next year.
Yes.
Which would be 3 in a row, which again would be so unprecedented. Is there fatigue already with the Dodgers doing so well?
Not from a business standpoint. Again, the numbers, attendance, and television viewership, this is a big-time team with a lot of very in-demand stars, a lot of attractive stars that fans want to see. But whether that sort of manifests into next season, we'll see. But, so far, life is pretty good for both the Dodgers and Major League Baseball.
Yeah, true. Okay, so let's talk about next season. Obviously, now the offseason has started. Who are some of the big names that we're sort of watching potentially in free agency, and are we expecting an active free agency here?
It should be an active period, and I just wrote about this, and it won't be at the Ohtani Soto level that we have seen the last couple of years, but there are some big names, most notably the 2 Kyles, Tucker and Schwarber, but beyond that, Pete Alonso, Alex Bregman, Bo Bichette, there's a lot of, calling them B talents is probably not really fair, but again, they're not at that Ohtani Soto level, but a lot of really good players are going to be out there.
And given the fact that this is a year away from a new collective bargaining agreement, are you expecting a lot of deals to happen before the new collective bargaining agreement happens, or new sort of trends that you're going to be seeing, or do you think a lot of things are going to be happening after the collective bargaining agreement? I guess my question is do you see a very active free agency and trade market before a potential new CBA or any sort of salary cap or any of that?
Yeah, it's really going to bear close watching. I think we're going to see a lot of shorter term deals that, certainly a lot of your big teams, the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Phillies and the folks that you would expect to be out there are going to be out there. Of course, Mets and Steve Cohen as well. But I would expect to see maybe not so many of the 10 and 15 year type of deals when you don't know what the long-term landscape is going to look like in any form. And so maybe we see a lot more of 3s and 4s, maybe 6s with options, that kind of thing. That's going to probably be some of the original manifestation of this upcoming winter.
Really going to be fascinating to see what it all happens here. But either way, good to be a Dodger, at least for right now. Eric Fisher, thank you so much, and great stuff throughout this entire postseason.
Thank you.
Elsewhere, it's yet another season of drama for the Memphis Grizzlies and star Ja Morant as the team suspended their controversial point guard for one game for conduct detrimental to the team. So let's bring in front office sports reporter Colin Salau. So Colin, what is Memphis saying Ja Morant did here, and is this going to be the end of his time with the team?
Yeah, so ESPN's Shams Charania reported that Ja Morant was called out after their game Friday by head coach Thomas Isolo, and he didn't seem to have a great response to that call out. He seemed to not really to show leadership qualities. And in fact, when reporters asked him, what could have changed, he said that perhaps the coaching staff thinks that they could have just not played him. And that was obviously something that went viral in public. So there's clearly tensions now, which is a little bit awkward as well, because there were reports or belief that Morant did not necessarily see eye to eye with Taylor Jenkins, who was his coach for several seasons to start his career. So that right now seems to be the case. It seems like Ja Morant is not necessarily giving his full effort in Memphis. But to your point, the question is whether this could be or stem the end of his time. This is his 7th season with the Grizzlies. It's a little odd because they traded Desmond Bane this year during the offseason, and that was kind of their way of saying, okay, we're going to move forward with Ja Morant and JJJ. So in one way, that was a seal of approval or a stamp of approval that Morant is going to be their player. But, we know that this is not just this year. This has not been a this year problem with Morant. This has been 2, 3, 4 years now of the Grizzlies facing Morant needing to be getting suspended for other antics, including, gun-related, antics. So I'm a little skeptical if they're going to pull the trigger now. And another question is, when you look around the league, who else needs a point guard? There's not really a lot of teams willing to invest. He has 3 years, $126 million left on his contract. I don't know how many more teams are going to look for a point guard in his prime who hasn't necessarily looked great over the last few seasons.
All right, Colin, thank you so much. Colin's going to stick around for the water cooler, and we're going to chat big news for someone named Will Smith. Don't go anywhere.
You see this team, and they're talking about A.J. Brown still. It's an injury. We want him. Are we going to ship him? This situation has to play out in the sense of, I think he wants to be there, but at the end of the day, you can't disrupt the locker room every single week. And the Eagles need him to be there if they're going to make a Super Bowl run.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
The playoff matchups for Asher Genty are not great. We start to look ahead. I know it's early, but it's not that early. So Genty, I think, is still a better long-term guy than it is maybe a redraft situation, especially with the schedule maps out. But I don't see a lot of games where he's potentially in a situation where the Raiders are ahead and running the football a ton, if you know what I mean. It's kind of tough out there for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Fantasy Sports Today, only on SportsGrid.
Are they chanting? Is it over? Does he
They'll be
accept
gone
the
by
resignation?
halftime. No,
are they chanting fire?
Probably.
Kelly,
Yeah,
clap,
it would
clap,
be.
clap,
It
clap.
would be warranted. It would be. I mean, you won a national championship in 2019. You're getting top 5, top 10 recruiting classes each and every year. You had the quarterback back to back to back to back. How many more chances are you going to get? I mean, really, what are we doing here?
SportsGrid's College Football Today.
One playoff win, and it's been a train wreck in every other year. But if we all agree that he was right in how he handicapped the quarterback talent coming out of that draft, and they got the right guy, and I think we all do agree on that, then what's the benefit of bringing a totally new voice into the room to now be the coach of Jackson Dart?
The Craig Carden Show, only on SportsGrid.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Front Office Sports Today. I'm Baker Machado, and let's get you caught up on some of the other stories we're following over at the FOS Water Cooler. And with that, stay with us for this next segment is FOS reporter Colin Salau, who's going to chat these stories with me. Good to see you, Colin.
Hey, Baker. Again, sorry for not being in a banana costume.
yes. John Shames has really changed the trajectory of these segments. Colin, let's start in golf today, where after a dominant win at the Hong Kong Open over the weekend, Tom McKibben became the very first LIV golfer to win his way into the Masters since Augusta National Golf Course changed their qualification criteria just over 2 months ago. The Hong Kong Open is one of 6 national opens that give their winners spots in the Masters and the Open Championship, in which LIV players are eligible to compete. What do you think about this, Colin? This is pretty good.
I think this is a big step forward for LIV. Obviously, it's our colleague David Rumsey called it a small win, but it's a way for them to kind of move into getting into these majors, and international seems to be the way. LIV, that's what LIV's going for. They're going for these international events, and this is just one step.
Yeah, and it's only one of 6 that LIV golfers can qualify for, but they're not guaranteed to be able to get in it because the previous winners of some of these other tournaments are not LIV golfers. So the chances of them getting into the Masters still are really tiny, but still they have at least a little off-ramp to get in there.
Yeah, I think that's small with anything. And I think when people had a weird reaction to LIV when LIV first came in, right? And now it's like, okay, one year at a time, one year at a time. I think this is kind of another one of those things for them.
All right, well, college basketball season tips off tonight, Colin, and Purdue enters the season ranked #1 in the preseason AP poll for the very first time. The Boilermakers, the favorites to win the national championship this year, followed by last season's runner-up Houston, Duke, UConn, and Kentucky rounding out the top 5. Now, Purdue returns 3 starters, including Wooden Award favorite Braden Smith. Last season's NCAA winners, Florida, by the way, coming in at #6 in this preseason poll, but Florida lost almost all of their players. Same with Duke. Duke, I think, lost every single one of their starters last year, and still, because of the transfer portal and how good these teams have become at it, this is why they're still in the top 5.
Yeah, I think you kind of pointed that the big thing there, the transfer portal. But I wanted to point something out here. I was looking, before this, preparing, I was looking through some stats. I think one in the last 10 to 12 years, one time has the preseason favorite won the NCAA championship.
Exactly. And think of also in college football, the preseason teams going into it. #1 was Texas and #2 was Penn State. Neither of those teams, by the way, anywhere close to that spot right now.
Yeah, and I think for me as an NBA fan, it's always going to be watching the players as prospects.
So true.
More, because of how unclear, who's going to win is going to be and how March Madness is. That's the whole point of March Madness. Those 3 guys, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, AJ Daibanza, that's going to be such a fun, trio to watch.
All right, let's talk the Dodgers. Will Smith came up clutch with the game-winning home run in Game 7 of the World Series, but also puts himself in rare territory. Will Smith, Colin, has won the last 6 World Series. The Dodgers catcher won the last 2. Former Rangers, Astros, and Braves reliever Will Smith won 3 in a row. And then the Dodgers' Will Smith won it in 2020. So as mentioned earlier, the Dodgers, the favorites to win next year. So does that mean Will Smith will make it 7 straight?
Okay, so this is an amazing stat, and I was so pleased when you sent this to me. But the thing that I like the most about what you sent, do you know the name of the pitcher that Will Smith hit the go-ahead home run against?
No, I forgot. Who is it?
This year, Will Smith hit the go-ahead home run against Shane Bieber.
Oh, yes, I do remember that.
Shane Bieber.
Yes.
And
Will
Justin
Smith and
Bieber.
Yes.
Notable Toronto Blue Jays
super fan.
I thought that was so amazing. Like, it's just, you can't write it. You can't write it any better than that. Will Will Smith win again? I don't know, but this is just fun. All of this is fun.
I love that, and I totally forgot about Bieber, and I love that trivia so much. All right, Colin, we're almost at a show. Let's tell you what we're watching tonight. Some big stuff over on the Tube. We got Monday Night Football, the Cardinals and the Cowboys tonight at 8:15 Eastern on ABC. As we mentioned, the NCAA men tipping off tonight. #3 Florida versus #13 Arizona. That's on TNT at 7 p.m. And then, of course, we have the Lakers and the Blazers, the surprising Blazers now at 4-2. That's at 10 p.m. Eastern on NBA TV. You watching any of those tonight, Colin?
I will not be watching the NFL game. At least I think I won't be, because I have YouTube TV.
Oh,
and that I don't know if that will be on my TV screen.
But at least you have
able to watch
NBA
it.
TV, which is all that matters.
Yes. One thing I will point out: Wizards Knicks in New York.
Yes.
DC going to New York ahead of the elections. I just, just a fun little thing there.
I will definitely be watching that game tonight. Of course, the Knicks beating the Bulls last night at the Garden. Colin, thanks so much for playing with us today.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
And thank you at home for